This episode of SESSLERS Something is brought to you by the National Campaign Against Drunk Driving. Hey everybody, just so you know, I am doing this ahead of going to PAX because of our production schedule. We need to get this done now, so it may not be as timely. If, I don't know, maybe you can get the moon with the PS4, just like Caligula. Yeah, there's a reference for you. Anyway, what I do want to comment on is today, this is Wednesday, not the day that you're watching it, Nintendo made some announcements, some new dates for some games, and of course everyone's talking about the 2DS. It's the non-hinged 3DS, but it doesn't do 3D. I know it's gotten some snickers from some corners. It looks a little bit on the odd side, but the thing is, this is a smart move by Nintendo, and I think they're going to sell a gajillion of them. That is not what I found notable coming from Nintendo today. What I did find very interesting was the decision to make the HD remake of Wind Waker available about 2.5 weeks earlier than it will be hitting retail. That's very, very interesting, and it's something that I expected to see happening with this next generation. Did not expect Nintendo to be one of the first ones out of the gate to give this a shot, and definitely doing it with probably one of the most major titles to try to experiment with this type of format of selling it. This could be, I hate the word, a game changer. If you think about it, especially for Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo, the games like Killzone, like Halo, like Zelda, they own that property and they own the pipelines to distribute it. So once that thing, I don't know, goes gold, gets approved, it's good to go, in theory, a Switch could be flipped and suddenly you can download it. And it doesn't have to go to the manufacturing plant for the pressing. That adds on extra time. And so I would almost say, if you had the option to download something and not have the physical game in your hand, is it worth it so much that you would wait those additional weeks? Or is the interest of playing the game so big that, hey, I want it now, I want to play it with a bunch of other people that can be playing it, especially if there's, you know, an online component to the game. This is what should have happened initially with, especially with Microsoft and the way that they were trying to discourage the purchase of used games. This is incentive. This says, hey, there is a massive value add, albeit a temporal one, for you to buy this just as a digital copy. It's something you can't return to the store because you get it early, you get to play it when it first is out, you get to be, you know, kind of front of the line, which is something that I think we all understand the appeal of. I'm interested to see if we're going to hear any announcements from Microsoft and Sony ahead of the launch of the two new consoles relevant to matters like this. But at the very least, Nintendo, congratulations. This is one of the instances where the curve has you in the front of it. And I'm very interested to see if the big boys are going to try to keep pace. Before we get to the second half of SESSLERS Something, we'd like to acknowledge our sponsor, the National Campaign Against Drunk Driving. When it comes to a sponsor, this is one I can really easily get behind. These are things that have affected people in my life, and I imagine for a lot of you, people in yours. Here's a statistic. In 2010, more than 10,000 people died in crashes in which a driver was at or over the legal blood alcohol limit of 0.08. And remember, even if there isn't a crash, people who are caught driving impaired often face jail time, loss of their driver's licenses, and numerous significant financial consequences. Those are attorney fees, higher insurance rates, court costs, lost time at work, and of course, the potential loss of a job. So really, at the end of the day, think about it. If you're impaired, stay where you are or get someone or a taxi driver to drive you home. Go get your car the next day. It might be a small pain, but it's sure less painful than finding yourself in hot water or having to be responsible for serious injury. All right, for the second thing I want to talk about, this happened earlier this week. There's a Kickstarter for ad blocker software. I know that it caused kind of a, I wouldn't say an explosion, maybe kind of a muffled implosion among myself and a lot of colleagues out there. We all work on the internet. And it is a certain ad-supported model that there, you know, at times can be questions as to how lucrative it is, how effective it is it something that was established over a decade ago, and that the times and the consumption habits of people have changed, that it needs to shift as well. Those are all very, very valid arguments. The way I look at it is that, look, there really seems to be a disconnect sometimes in communication between people who are creating content in the games media, and to be fair, any media, online, and with the audience. The only way this gets done, the way that the camera that I'm talking to right now can be afforded, the way that the lights are illuminating me so I don't look as ugly as I actually do in natural light. Those things cost money, and the only way to generate those things is through revenue, and that revenue is through ad sales. It really is kind of a reality, and I know it runs a little contrary to notions of the web and, you know, kind of that sense of free. But I found it to be interesting, and at the same time, I'll be honest, I found it to be frustrating that this idea that I love doing this job, it's a lot of fun, but it isn't solely an act of generosity. It is a way in which I can support myself, I can support my wife, and a lot of people can maintain their families. I would like to think that in this very caustic time of dialogue between people in the press, people who make games, and people who consume both, that there can at least be a recognition that there's a pragmaticism that has to exist if this trifecta is to perpetuate. And right now, like it or not, it's called